The emergency sirens had been screaming across the galaxy for 3 straight days. In the massive council chambers of the Galactic Alliance headquarters, beings from 10,000 worlds sat in growing panic. The air thick with the smell of fear, pheromones from a dozen different species. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the human section, watching the chaos unfold. His aide, Lieutenant Lisa Carter, tapped notes into her tablet, while keeping her face completely blank. This expression had learned to terrify most alien species over the years, though neither human understood why. The Zephyrian delegate was currently on the speaker platform, all 4 of his arms waving frantically as he spoke through his translation. "Device, the Voidwalkers have consumed our entire outer fleet in less than 6 hours. Our strongest warships simply disappeared when they tried to engage. These creatures phase through our shields like they do not exist." A low moan came from the Vorthan section. The crystalline beings were known for their powerful psychic abilities, but even they seemed broken. Their lead crystal, Shard Singer Veltar, pulsed with dim colors as she spoke. Our collective minds touched theirs briefly. They hunger for reality itself. They feed on the foundation of space and time. Our psychic defenses crumbled the moment we made contact. Jake leaned back in his chair and took a sip from his coffee mug. The mug had "World's Okayest Ambassador" printed on it, gift from his daughter back on Earth. Lisa glanced at him and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The hegemony's representative, Counselor Thexera, stood next. Her 6 eyes were wide, with terror as she addressed the chamber. "The Voidwalkers are not like anything we have faced before. They exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. Our sensors can barely detect them. When they feed, entire star systems simply vanish from reality." "How many systems have we lost?" asked the Altarian Prime Minister, his scaled skin shifting to deep purple with stress. 17 confirmed gone completely," Thexera replied. 38 more are currently under attack. At this rate of consumption, they will devour the entire galaxy within 6 months. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted in hundreds of languages. Some species began their traditional death wails. Others started praying to their various gods. The Mukari ambassador actually fainted, which was impressive since his species had no circulatory system. Jake finished his coffee and set the mug down with a small clink. The sound somehow carried across the massive chamber, cutting through the noise. Thousands of eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs turned toward the human section. "Has anyone tried asking them what they want?" Jake said in his normal speaking voice. The translation matrix picked up his words and broadcast them in real time to every species present. The silence that followed was deafening. Counselor Thexera stared at him with all 6 eyes. "Ambassador Morrison, these beings consume reality itself. They do not communicate. They simply devour everything in their path." Jake nodded slowly. "Right, but has anyone actually tried talking to them? I mean, before shooting at them?" Delegate made a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "They destroyed our entire fleet before we could even attempt communication protocols." "Okay, but what if they were just defending themselves?" Jake asked. "I mean, if someone showed up in my backyard with a bunch of warships, I might take that." As a threat too, the chamber fell silent again. Several delegates began making notes frantically. The Altarian Prime Minister's scales shifted to a color that had no name in human language but roughly translated to existential confusion mixed with growing horror. Lisa leaned over and whispered, "Jake, they're all staring at us like we're about to do something terrible." Jake looked around the chamber, genuinely puzzled. "Why, I just suggested talking to them first." The hegemony's military advisor, General Kexther, spoke up. His voice came out as a series of clicks and whistles. "Ambassador Morrison, with respect, your species has a documented history of approaching impossible situations with disturbing casualness. The last time a human said they would handle a galactic crisis, half the Outer Rim was restructured. That was Ben Hayes, and he saved everyone from the Drakari swarm," Jake replied. "Besides, that was like 50 years ago. 20 years ago, one of your engineers stopped a quantum storm by building something she called a reality anchor out of spare parts," General Kexter continued. "The storm not only stopped, It began producing energy that we still use today.
Out.
Shrugged. Kelly Wright was always good with machines. Like, this doesn't seem that complicated. These Voidwalker things showed up. Everyone started shooting at them, and now they're eating star systems. Maybe they're just cranky because nobody tried diplomacy first. The silence stretched on. Jake noticed that several delegates were quietly activating what looked like emergency communication devices. Others were whispering urgently to their aides. The Mukari ambassador had woken up from his faint and was now hyperventilating into a small breathing apparatus. Ambassador Morrison. Counselor Thexera said carefully, "Are you suggesting that humanity will attempt to resolve this crisis?" Jake finished the last drop of his coffee and stood up, stretching slightly. If nobody else has any better ideas, sure. He paused and looked around the chamber. Fine, I got this. The translation matrix broadcast these 4 words across the chamber. Then it transmitted them to every ship, station, and planet connected to the Galactic communication network. Within minutes, the words "fine, I got this" had reached every corner of known space. The reaction was immediate and universal. Emergency klaxons began sounding on 10,000 worlds. Military fleets started retreating to their home systems. Entire planets began activating their deepest bunkers and emergency protocols. The galactic stock market crashed. 3 minor governments surrendered to their neighbors preemptively, just to avoid whatever was coming next in the council chamber. Delegates were frantically packing their belongings and rushing toward the exits. The Zephyrian ambassador was already calling for his personal transport. The Vorthan collective had gone completely dark, cutting off all psychic communication with the outside galaxy. Jake looked around at the emptying chamber with confusion. Where's everyone going? We haven't even started planning yet. Lisa was staring at her tablet, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Jake, according to these reports, half the galaxy just went into emergency lockdown. They're calling it the Morrison Protocol. The what now? Apparently they named the standard response to humans solving galactic problems after you. There's a whole procedure. Step 1 is immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel from the affected region. Jake sat back down heavily. I just said I'd help. Why is everyone acting like I declared war on physics? Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Jake, do you remember the time you fixed the coffee machine in the break room? Yeah, it was making that weird noise. You rewired it using parts from the quantum communicator and somehow made it start predicting the weather. Jake frowned. That was an accident. And the weather predictions were pretty accurate. The point is, when humans say they'll fix something, the universe tends to get nervous. As if to prove her point, another emergency alert flashed across Lisa's tablet. The Galactic Defense Fleet was pulling back to minimum safe distance. Whatever. Minimum safe distance meant when humans were involved. Dr. Alex Turner sat in his office on the Galactic Council Research Station, frantically typing warnings to every member species in the Alliance. His hands shook as he pulled up files from the historical archives, broadcasting them across secure channels as fast as his computer could process them. The first file was labeled The Drakari Incident, Human Involvement Classification, Terrifying Success. 50 years ago, the Drakari swarm had emerged from deep space like a plague of metal locusts. Each ship in their fleet was alive, bred from some horrible fusion of biology and technology. They consumed entire worlds, not for resources, but simply because they could. Their hive mind was so powerful that it could coordinate attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The galaxy's greatest military minds had tried everything. The hegemony threw their largest fleets at the swarm and watched them get torn apart. The Zephyrians attempted to use their advanced technology to disrupt the hive mind. But the Drakari adapted faster than anyone thought possible. Even the mysterious Void Touched, beings who existed partially outside normal space, refused to engage the swarm directly. Captain Ben Hayes had been commanding a simple exploration vessel called the New Frontier when the swarm reached the outer rim territories. His ship was nothing special, just a basic science vessel with minimal weapons and a crew of 30 humans who were supposed to be mapping asteroid fields. When the distress calls started coming in from the outer colonies, Ben's crew had volunteered to help with evacuations. They were pulling survivors off a mining station when the Drakari main fleet arrived. 300 bioships, each one the size of a city, dropped out of hyperspace and began consuming everything in the system. The evacuation fleet panicked. Military escorts abandoned their positions and jumped to hyperspace. Civilian transports scattered in every direction. In the middle of this chaos, with Drakari hunters closing in on defenseless refugee ships, Captain Hayes had gotten on the emergency communication channel. "This is Captain Hayes of the New Frontier. I've got this." Those 6 words had been broadcast across the fleet. Within minutes, every ship still in the system had jumped to hyperspace, leaving Hayes and his tiny crew alone with the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. What happened next was still classified at the highest levels, but the results spoke for themselves. Captain Hayes had somehow gotten close enough to one of the Drakari bioships to board it. He spent 3 days inside the ship, during which all communication was lost. When he finally emerged, he was carrying a small device that looked like it had been built from spare parts and determination. The device was a virus. Not a computer virus, but something that attacked the Drakari hive mind directly. Hayes had studied their biology during his 3 days inside their ship, figured out how their collective consciousness worked, and built something that could turn it against itself. When he activated the device, the entire Drakari fleet stopped attacking. For the first time in their species' history, individual Drakari began thinking for themselves. Most of them immediately realized that consuming entire civilizations was probably not the best way to make friends. Within hours, the swarm had disbanded, with individual ships heading off in different directions to pursue hobbies and start small businesses. The galaxy had celebrated Captain Hayes as a hero, right up until they realized what he had actually done. He had not just defeated the Drakari. He had fundamentally changed their entire species without asking permission from anyone, including the Drakari themselves. The ethics committee was still arguing about whether this constituted genocide or forced evolution 50 years. Dr. Turner finished transmitting the Hayes file and opened the next one. The quantum storm event. Human solution classification. Possible, but it worked. Anyway, 20 years ago, a tear in spacetime had appeared near the galactic core. The tear was growing, consuming reality itself, and replacing it with raw quantum chaos. Scientists calculated that if it continued expanding at its current rate, it would unravel the fundamental laws of physics across the entire galaxy. Within 5 years, the greatest minds in known space had worked together on the problem. The Altarian Collective built massive reality stabilizers. The hegemony constructed quantum dampening fields. The Zephyrians tried to close the tear using their most advanced technology. Nothing worked. The tear kept growing, and the quantum chaos kept spreading. Engineer Kelly had been working on a routine maintenance project aboard the orbital research station that was studying the tear. She was just supposed to fix a broken coffee machine in the station's break room. Instead, she had looked at the quantum storm data on her lunch break and muttered those same deadly words. "Fine, I got this." What Kelly built in the station's maintenance bay still defied every known law of physics. She called it a reality anchor, though the technical specifications read more like a shopping list written by someone having a mental breakdown. Spare parts from the coffee machine, quantum field generators from the station's life support system, and what her notes described as aggressive optimism about the nature of space and time. The device should not have worked. According to every theoretical model, it should have exploded the moment Kelly turned it on, taking half the research station with it. Instead, it had not only stopped the quantum storm from growing, it had somehow convinced the tear in spacetime to start. Producing energy instead of consuming reality, the storm became a power source that still provided clean energy to half the galaxy. Kelly Wright had turned a universe-ending catastrophe into the biggest breakthrough in energy production in galactic history. When asked how she did it, she had shrugged and said she just asked the quantum chaos politely if it would mind doing something more useful with its time. Dr. Turner was now sweating as he opened the third file. This one was simply labeled Other Human Incidents, incomplete list. The file was 3,000 pages long and growing. Every entry followed the same pattern: impossible problem, human involvement, reality-defying solution, galaxy-wide confusion. About how it actually worked? There was the time engineer Bob Martinez had fixed a black hole that was spinning the wrong direction by feeding it comedy shows from Earth television. The incident where Dr. Carol Johnson had ended a war between two energy beings by teaching them to play rock, paper, scissors. The event that historians still called the Tuesday Incident. Where maintenance worker Steve Adams had prevented the heat death of a solar system by rewiring its star. Using techniques he learned from fixing car engines. Each incident had prompted new protocols, emergency procedures, evacuation plans. The galaxy had learned that when humans got involved in cosmic-level problems, the best strategy was to get as far away as possible and wait to see what new law of physics they would accidentally break. Dr. Turner sent out his final warning message to all member species. Ambassador Jake Morrison has just declared human involvement in the Voidwalker crisis. Recommend immediate implementation of Morrison Protocol emergency procedures. All non-essential personnel should evacuate to minimum safe distance immediately. Minimum safe distance when humans are involved is currently defined as another galaxy, but this may not be far enough. His computer chimed with an incoming message from Galactic Defense Command. The message was brief. Dr. Turner, how worried should we be this time? Alex Turner looked at his screen for a long moment, then typed his reply. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the complete restructuring of reality as we know it, I would say we are looking at about a 15. He sent the message and began packing his emergency bag. It was going to be a very long week. Jake Morrison walked through the nearly empty corridors of the Galactic Council station, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Most of the delegates had evacuated within hours of his announcement, leaving behind only essential personnel and a few brave souls who were either too curious or too stubborn to leave. He found Lisa in the communications center, surrounded by dozens of screens showing news feeds from across the galaxy. Her face was pale as she watched the reports coming in from every corner of known space. How bad is it? Jake asked, settling into a chair beside her. Lisa gestured at the screens. The Altarian defense fleet is pulled back to their home system and activated planetary shields. The Zephyrian Empire has closed all their hyperspace lanes. 3 different species have gone into what they call deep hibernation protocols until this is over. Jake rubbed his forehead. I still don't understand why everyone is so worked up. We haven't even done anything yet. It's exactly why they're scared, Lisa said. Look at this. She pulled up a news feed from the Hegemony News Network. The anchor was a Hegemony officer with all 6 eyes wide with panic. This is Commander Veltosh, reporting from Hegemony Central Command. We have confirmed reports that the human ambassador, Jake Morrison, has personally taken responsibility for resolving the Voidwalker crisis. All military personnel are advised to maintain maximum distance from any human vessels or installations. We repeat, do not approach human ships under any circumstances. Jake stared at the screen. And they're talking about me like I'm some kind of weapon. According to galactic databases, you kind of are, Lisa said. She pulled up another screen showing Jake's official diplomatic record. It says here that you once ended a trade dispute between the Mukari and the UHER and the UHENs by accidentally inventing a new form of mathematics. I was just trying to split the shipping costs fairly, Jake protested. It wasn't my fault that the solution required proving that certain numbers could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Lisa scrolled through more reports. The Galactic Stock Exchange has suspended all trading. Emergency supply runs are being organized to transport food and medical supplies to systems that are going into lockdown. The Quantum Mechanics Guild has issued a statement asking all reality-based life forms to prepare for the possibility of fundamental changes to the nature of existence. Jake's personal communicator buzzed. He looked at the caller ID and groaned. It's Admiral Chen from Earth Defense Command. He accepted the call, and Admiral Chen's face appeared on the small screen. Her expression was the carefully controlled look of someone trying very hard not to panic. Ambassador Morrison, she said. In a tight voice, I've been getting some very interesting calls from galactic leaders. Something about you volunteering to handle the Voidwalker situation? "Admiral, I just said I'd help," Jake replied. Everyone else seemed to be panicking instead of actually doing anything useful. Admiral Chen closed her eyes for a moment. "Jake, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you remember the briefing we gave you when you accepted the ambassador position? You mean the one about diplomatic protocols and cultural sensitivity? No, the other one. One about why humans are not allowed to volunteer for Galactic? Crisis resolution without prior approval from Earth Command." Jake frowned. "I don't remember that briefing." "That's because you fell asleep during it," Lisa said helpfully. "I have the whole thing recorded on my tablet, if you want to review it," Admiral Chen continued. "Jake, the last time a human offered to solve a galactic crisis without going through proper channels, Captain Hayes accidentally created a new form of life. Kelly Wright turned a universal disaster into a power source. And Engineer Rodriguez somehow taught a neutron star to sing opera." "The neutron star seemed to enjoy it," Jake said defensively. "The point is, every time one of you says, 'I got this,' reality tends to get nervous. The entire galaxy has protocols for dealing with human problem-solving attempts. These protocols exist for good reasons." Lisa leaned over to the communicator. "Admiral, what exactly are we supposed to do?" "The Void Walkers are still out there, consuming star systems." Admiral Chen sighed. "You're going to need a team. You need people who understand how Jake's mind works and can hopefully keep him from accidentally breaking the universe." "I have some ideas about who to call," Jake said. "My old crew from the Exploration Service might be available." The Admiral's face went pale. "Your old crew? You mean Maya Rodriguez, Tony Baker, Sam Johnson, Emma Foster, and Ryan Clark?" "Yeah, we worked together for 5 years. They know how I think." Admiral Chen put her head in her hands. "Jake, do you have any idea what those 5 people have been doing since they left the Exploration Service? It's probably normal jobs, right?" Lisa was already pulling up personnel files on her tablet. "Let's see. Maya Rodriguez is currently listed as freelance reality engineer. Her last known project was building a coffee shop that exists in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Tony Baker is working as what he calls a theoretical weapons consultant," Lisa continued. "His business card says if it can't be destroyed, you're not trying hard enough. Sam Johnson is a test pilot for experimental spacecraft. Her current project is testing a ship that travels by convincing the universe that it's already at its destination. Emma Foster is listed as a xenobiologist, but according to these reports, she's somehow become the unofficial ambassador to 3 species that were supposed to be extinct. She apparently found them hiding in parallel dimensions and convinced them to come back." Ryan Clark is working in communications, but his specialty is aggressive customer service. He once ended a war by being so polite to both sides that they felt too guilty to keep fighting. Admiral Chen looked up from her hands. "Jake, you want to assemble a team consisting of an engineer who treats physics as a suggestion, a weapons expert who considers the laws of nature to be enemy obstacles, a pilot who has never met a flight path she couldn't ignore, a biologist who makes friends with impossible creatures, and a communications officer who can end conflicts through excessive politeness." "When you put it like that, it sounds like exactly the right team for this job," Jake said cheerfully. The Admiral stared at him for a long moment. "God help us all." "Fine, but you're doing this by the book. Official mission parameters, regular check-ins, and for the love of all that's holy, try not to invent any new forms of existence while you're out there." "I'll do my best," Jake promised. After ending the call, Jake turned to Lisa. "So, want to help me call the gang back together?" Lisa looked at the chaos on her screens, then at Jake's hopeful expression. "You know what? Not at this point. The universe is probably expecting us to do something impossible anyway." As they began making calls to Jake's old crew, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The Voidwalkers had consumed 3 more star systems. Emergency evacuation. Fleets were fleeing in every direction. And somewhere in deep space, reality itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what the humans would do next. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans said, "I got this," they usually meant it, even if they had no idea what this actually was. The team assembled at the human diplomatic station 3 days later. Jake stood in the main conference room, watching his old crew arrive one by one. It had been 2 years since they had all worked together, but seeing them again felt like coming home. Maya Rodriguez was the first to arrive, carrying a large toolbox that seemed to hum with energy. She was a small woman, with grease-stained coveralls and bright eyes that held the look of someone who had seen the universe's blueprints and decided they needed improvement. "Jake," she called out, setting down her toolbox with a heavy thud.
"I
"Brought my portable workshop. And coffee. Lots of coffee. I have a feeling we're going to need it." Tony Baker walked in next, a tall man with the easy smile of someone who had never met a problem he couldn't blow up. He carried what looked like a briefcase, but Jake knew it probably contained weapons that violated several laws of physics. "Good to see you, boss," Tony said, giving Jake a firm handshake. "I heard we're dealing with interdimensional parasites. Sounds like fun." Sam Johnson arrived with her usual dramatic flair, sliding through the door like she was still piloting a spacecraft. She was average height, with short brown hair and the kind of grin that suggested she was always planning something that would probably terrify safety inspectors. "Jake Morrison, you beautiful disaster," she said, spinning around to survey the room. "I was getting bored with test flights anyway. At least this job promises some decent explosions." Dr. Emma Foster entered quietly, but her presence immediately filled the room. She had the calm confidence of someone who could make friends with a black hole, if she put her mind to it. Behind her floated a small, translucent creature that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a cloud. "Hello, Jake," Emma said warmly. "I brought a friend. This is Whisper. She's from the 7th dimension, and she wanted to help." The creature made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Jake nodded politely, having learned years ago not to question Emma's choice of companions. Finally, Ryan Clark strolled in, looking like he had just stepped out of a customer service training video. He wore a neat uniform and carried a communications device that was definitely not standard issue. "Ambassador Morrison," he said with a smile that could have powered a small city. "I've been monitoring Galactic communications about this mission. The good news is that everyone is very interested in our progress. The bad news is that 17 different species have started betting pools on whether we'll accidentally destroy the universe." "What are the odds?" Jake asked. "Currently running?" "About 50-50, Ryan replied cheerfully. "I put 20 credits on us, only breaking physics a little bit." Lisa entered the room carrying a stack of official-looking documents. "I've got the mission briefing from Earth Command and the Galactic Council. The official objective is to neutralize the Voidwalker threat with minimal collateral damage to reality." "Define minimal," Maya said, already unpacking tools from her toolbox. "According to the paperwork, we're allowed to bend the laws of physics. But we're not supposed to break them completely," Lisa read. "We're also not allowed to create new forms of life, alter the fundamental nature of existence, cause any paradoxes that might unravel the timeline." Tony frowned. "That's going to limit our options considerably." "It's more like guidelines anyway," Sam said, examining a star chart on the wall. "So where exactly are these Voidwalkers?" Emma's companion Whisper made a series of musical tones. Emma nodded as if she understood perfectly. "Whisper says they're currently in the Wolf 359 system, feeding on the abandoned mining operations there. She can sense their dimensional signature." "It's perfect," Maya said, her eyes lighting up. "Wolf 359 has been empty for years. Plenty of salvage material and no civilians to evacuate." Jake looked around at his team. "Okay, so what's the plan?" "Well," Maya said, pulling out what looked like a blueprint drawn on napkins, "I've been thinking about this problem, and I think the issue is that everyone's been trying to fight these things in normal space. But if they exist partially in another dimension, we need to meet them on their own terms." She spread the napkins out on the table. The drawings showed a device that looked like someone had crossed a coffee machine with a dimensional portal generator. "What exactly is that?" Jake asked. "I call it a multi-dimensional interaction device," Maya said proudly. "But basically, it's a really complicated coffee maker that can exist in multiple dimensions at the same time." Tony leaned over to examine the plans. "How does it work?" "Well, the coffee part is pretty standard," Maya explained. "But I've modified the heating element to generate controlled quantum fluctuations. The water reservoir doubles as a dimensional anchor, and the brewing process creates a stable bridge between realities. Sam looked confused. You want to serve coffee to interdimensional parasites? Not just any coffee, Maya said. Coffee that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. If these voidwalkers are consuming reality because they can't find what they're looking for in our dimension, maybe they just need a taste of home. Emma nodded thoughtfully. That's actually brilliant. Many interdimensional beings experience what we might call homesickness. They consume realities looking for something that reminds them of their origin point. So we're going to cure interdimensional homesickness with coffee? Jake asked. It's not the strangest thing we've ever done, Ryan pointed out. Remember when? We ended that civil war by teaching both sides to make pizza. That was different, Jake said. That was just regular diplomacy. Jake, Lisa said gently, you convinced two species to stop fighting by introducing them to cheese. This is not that much weirder. Maya was already making calculations on her tablet. I'll need about 3 days to build the device. We'll need to set up in the Wolf 359 system where the Voidwalkers are feeding. Sam, can you get us there without anyone noticing? Sam grinned. I've got a ship that can travel through hyperspace backwards. The universe gets so confused trying to figure out where we're going that it usually just lets us arrive wherever we want. Ryan, we'll need you to monitor galactic communications, Jake said. Let us know if anyone starts getting too worried about what we're doing. Already on it, Ryan said. I've been sending out reassuring messages to all major governments. My current message is everything is proceeding normally. Please do not panic about the humans. How are they responding? Lisa asked. Most of them are interpreting do not panic as panic immediately, Ryan admitted. But I'm working on improving the messaging. Emma was communicating with Whisper in what sounded like a combination of whistles and musical tones. Whisper says she can guide us to the exact dimensional frequency where the Voidwalkers originated. She thinks they might be lost rather than malicious. Lost interdimensional beings with the ability to consume star systems, Tony mused. This job just keeps getting better. Jake looked around at his team. They were all smiling, which was either a very good sign or a very bad one. In his experience with this particular group, it was usually both. All right, he said. Let's go save the galaxy with coffee and friendship. Probably violate several laws of physics in the process, Maya added cheerfully. That's just Tuesday for us, Sam said. As the team began planning their mission in detail, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Voidwalkers had consumed 2 more systems, and panic was spreading to every corner of known space. But for the first time since the crisis began, Jake felt optimistic. After all, how hard could it be to serve coffee to beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously? The ship Sam had acquired was exactly what Jake expected from her. It looked like someone had taken 3 different spacecraft, welded them together, and then painted the whole thing bright orange with racing stripes. The name Probability Error was painted on the side in letters that seemed to shift color depending on the angle. She's beautiful, Sam said proudly as they approached the docking bay. The previous owner said she was impossible to fly, which is exactly what I look for in a spacecraft. Maya was already examining the ship's external systems with her scanner. The hyperspace drive is running backwards. The navigation computer thinks it's a toaster, and the artificial gravity generator is playing music. I love it already. They boarded the ship and found the interior was just as chaotic as the outside. The bridge had been modified so extensively that it barely resembled anything from a standard spacecraft manual. Wires ran along the ceiling in patterns that hurt to look at, and several panels displayed information in languages that might not have been invented yet. Don't touch the red buttons, Sam warned as everyone strapped in. Actually, don't touch any buttons unless I tell you to. The ship gets confused if too many people try to help. Emma was already setting up a small workstation for Whisper, who seemed perfectly comfortable despite being a 7th-dimensional being on a ship that operated according to Sam's personal interpretation of physics. The translucent creature was making soft, chiming sounds that seemed to harmonize with the ship's systems. Whisper says the ship's reality distortion field feels like home to her, Emma translated. She wants to know if Sam built it intentionally or by accident. Little bit of both, Sam replied, beginning the launch sequence. I was trying to install a coffee maker and somehow ended up modifying the space-time continuum instead. That's the third time this week someone's mentioned accidentally affecting reality while making coffee, Ryan observed. He was monitoring communications from a station that appeared to be made from repurposed kitchen appliances. I'm starting to think humans have an unhealthy relationship with caffeine. Coffee is just a convenient excuse, Maya said, assembling her multi-dimensional brewing device in the ship's cargo bay. We'd probably break physics for other reasons if we had to. The launch from the diplomatic station went smoothly, if you ignored the fact that several of the ship's systems insisted. They were already at their destination before they had left the docking bay. Sam handled this contradiction by telling the computer it was being silly and then engaging the hyperspace drive manually. The journey to Wolf 359 took 3 hours according to the ship's chronometer, 15 minutes according to the navigation system, and -2 hours according to Maya's coffee machine, which had somehow started keeping time in a parallel universe where they had already arrived. I'm getting readings from the Voidwalkers, Emma reported as they dropped out of hyperspace. Whisper says there are 12 of them in this system, and they're very unhappy. Through the main viewer, they could see the evidence of the Voidwalkers. Feeding what had once been a thriving mining operation was now mostly empty space. Asteroids had been consumed down to nothing, leaving behind twisted fragments of metal and rock that looked like they had been partially erased from existence. There, Tony said, pointing at the scanner readings. I'm detecting massive dimensional distortions near the fourth planet, where the fourth planet used to be. The Voidwalkers themselves were barely visible, appearing as shifting shadows against the starfield. They moved like living tears in space, consuming everything they touched and leaving behind regions where physics seemed uncertain about what was supposed to exist. They're beautiful, Emma said softly, and so very lost. They're also consuming reality, Jake pointed out. Should probably do something about that before they eat anything important. Maya finished connecting the last components of her coffee machine. The device now looked like something that belonged in either a high-tech laboratory or a very advanced cafe. Lights blinked in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical sequences, and steam rose from vents in configurations that shouldn't have been possible. Okay, the multidimensional interaction device is ready, Maya announced. But I need to calibrate it to the Voidwalker's dimensional frequency first. How do we do that? Jake asked. We get close enough for Whisper to establish communication, Emma said. She can translate their dimensional signature into something the machine can understand. Sam grinned. Getting close to interdimensional parasites that consume reality. This is definitely going on my resume. She piloted the ship toward the largest concentration of void. Walkers with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she had done this sort of thing before. The ship's systems began registering warnings in 17 different languages, most of which were variations on "this is a very bad idea." Dimensional distortion increasing, Tony reported. The ship's hull is starting to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously? That's normal, Sam said. The ship was built to handle paradoxes. Just don't think too hard about which version of reality we're currently in. As they approached the feeding Voidwalkers, the effects became more pronounced. Through the viewports, they could see space itself bending and twisting. Stars appeared and disappeared as the creatures moved through dimensions, occasionally bringing pieces of other realities with them. I'm getting readings that suggest these beings are not from anywhere in our galactic cluster, Emma said. Whisper. Thinks they might be from a universe where the fundamental constants are different. That would explain why they can't find what they're looking for here, Maya said, making adjustments to her machine. They're probably starving because nothing in our reality tastes right to them. Establishing communication now, Emma said. She and Whisper began a complex process that involved musical tones, light patterns, and what appeared to be interpretive dance. The seventh-dimensional being pulsed with colors that had no names in any human language. Contact, Emma announced. They're responding. Whisper is translating. The ship's speakers crackled with sounds that were part music, part static, and part something that made everyone's teeth itch. But gradually, the sounds began to form patterns that almost resembled language. They're saying they're hungry, Emma translated. They've been searching for home for so long that they've forgotten what it tastes like. They're consuming star systems because they're desperate to find something familiar. Poor things, Maya said sympathetically. Well, let's see if we can help them with that. She activated her coffee machine, and immediately the ship filled with an aroma that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The smell was coffee, but also something more. It carried hints of places that might exist, memories of mornings that had never happened. In the comfort of homes and dimensions, that were just slightly sideways from reality. The effect on the Voidwalkers was immediate. The massive creatures stopped their feeding and turned toward the ship. For the first time since the crisis began, they were perfectly still. They remember, Emma whispered, tears in her eyes. Whisper says they remember what home smells like. Maya poured the first cup from her machine. The liquid that emerged was coffee, but it was also somehow light, sound, memory, and possibility, all at the same time. It existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and tasted like everything good that had ever happened. Now comes the tricky part, Maya said. We need to serve coffee to beings that exist partially outside our reality, without accidentally creating a paradox that breaks the universe. Just another Tuesday for us, Ryan said cheerfully. I'll start composing the after-action report. How do you spell interdimensional customer service in Galactic Standard? Maya carefully poured the multi-dimensional coffee into a container that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that normal cups were not adequate for liquids that existed in 17 dimensions at once. The container shifted between solid and translucent, occasionally showing glimpses of what might have been. It's other realities where coffee cups were more important than they probably should be. How exactly do we serve coffee to beings that exist partially outside our universe? Tony asked, watching the Void Walkers through the viewports. The massive creatures were still motionless, their attention focused entirely on the ship. Very carefully, Emma said. She was still in communication with Whisper, who was translating the growing excitement from the Void Walkers. They're remembering more now. Spur says the smell is awakening memories they thought they had lost forever. Sam kept the ship steady. As Maya prepared to deploy what she called her interdimensional service protocol. This involved extending a mechanical arm from the ship's hull that held the coffee container. The arm itself had been modified with technology that Maya claimed would allow it to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I still think this is the strangest diplomatic mission I've ever been on, Jake said, watching Maya work. Learn to trust your instincts. The strangest part is that it's actually working, Ryan said from his communications station. I'm monitoring galactic news feeds and the Void Walkers have stopped consuming star systems. Every military force in the galaxy is trying to figure out what we did. We haven't done anything yet, Jake pointed out. That's what's confusing them. Ryan replied cheerfully. The official reports just say humans are involved, situation unclear. Recommend continued vigilance. Maya activated the deployment system, and the mechanical arm extended toward the nearest Void Walker. The creature was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but it approached the offering with surprising gentleness. When it made contact with the coffee container, reality shimmered around both the creature and the ship. Contact established, Emma announced. The Void Walker is tasting the coffee now. What happened next was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. Void Walker began to change, its shadowy form becoming more solid and defined. Colors appeared within its structure, swirling patterns of light that seemed to represent pure emotion. The creature made a sound that was part song, part sigh of relief, and part something that made everyone on the ship feel oddly homesick for places they had never been. It's working, Maya said, monitoring her instruments. The coffee is providing the dimensional anchor they needed. They can taste home again. The other Void Walkers began approaching the ship, moving with the same careful gentleness as the first. Emma and Whisper worked together to establish communication with each one. While Maya quickly prepared more coffee using her impossible machine, telling their story, Emma said, tears streaming down her face as she translated, their universe was dying. The fundamental forces that held their reality together were failing. They fled into interdimensional space, searching for a new home, but nothing in our universe felt right to them. They've been wandering for thousands of years, she continued, They were consuming star systems not out of malice, but because they were starving. They needed to taste reality itself, hoping to find something that reminded them of what they had lost. Jake watched as each Voidwalker carefully approached Maya's coffee offering. With each taste, the creatures became more solid, more real. The dangerous energy that had allowed them to consume entire systems was being channeled into something else. They were healing. "Maya," he said quietly, "what exactly did you put in that coffee?" Maya smiled as she prepared another batch. "Coffee beans from Earth, water from the Centauri colonies, and a little bit of something I call concentrated nostalgia." "Concentrated nostalgia? It's complicated," she said. "Basically, I took the quantum signature of homesickness and infused it into the brewing process. The coffee doesn't just taste like home to them. It actually contains the concept of home, translated into a form they can understand." Tony was monitoring the ship's defensive systems, though it was becoming clear they wouldn't be needed. Voidwalkers are stabilizing. Their dimensional distortion fields are decreasing to safe levels. "They're grateful," Emma said, still translating for Whisper. "They want to know how they can repay us for giving them back their sense of home." Jake thought about this for a moment. Asked them if they'd be willing to help with galactic energy production. Maya's coffee machine seems to have created a stable dimensional bridge. Maybe they could use their abilities to help, instead of accidentally destroying things. Emma relayed the question, and the response was immediate. The Voidwalkers began working together, their combined abilities creating stable portals between dimensions. Instead of consuming energy, they were now generating it, pulling power from the dimensional boundaries between realities. "They're creating clean energy sources," Maya said, watching her instruments with excitement. "Unlimited power with zero environmental impact. This could revolutionize how the galaxy handles energy production." Sam started laughing. "Get this straight. We solved the Voidwalker crisis by giving them coffee and a job." "It's not that simple," Emma said. "We gave them back their sense of purpose. They were never meant to be destroyers. In their original universe, they were the guardians of dimensional stability. Now, they can be guardians again." Ryan was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "I'm getting reports that the energy output from this system is off the charts. 3 different species are asking if we're accepting applications for trade partnerships." "Tell them we'll get back to them," Jake said. "Right now, I think we should focus on making sure our new friends are settled in properly." Over the next few hours, the Voidwalkers worked together to transform the Wolf 359 system into something extraordinary. Using their dimensional abilities, they created stable energy sources that could power entire sectors of the galaxy. The abandoned mining equipment was repurposed into distribution networks that could safely channel the new energy across interstellar distances. "They're building a new kind of infrastructure," Maya observed, watching the creatures work. "Instead of consuming star systems, they're creating them. This is going to change everything." Emma was still in communication with the Voidwalkers, who had apparently decided to adopt formal names for their new lives. The first one they had contacted introduced himself as Guardian Prime, while the others chose names like Energy Shepherd and Dimensional Curator. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, Emma translated. They're offering their services as interdimensional engineers and energy consultants. Jake could already imagine the paperwork this was going to generate. "I'll contact Admiral Chen and let her know we'll need to set up a new embassy. For interdimensional beings who specialize in energy production and reality maintenance, this is definitely going in the history books," Ryan said. "The day humans ended a galactic crisis by serving coffee to interdimensional parasites and accidentally creating a new form of civilization." Sam finished her post-flight checklist and turned to the group. "So, what's next? Do we head back to the diplomatic station and file our report?" Jake looked around at his team, then at the transformed Wolf 355-59 system where the Voidwalkers were still working to create their new home. "I think we should stay for a while, make sure everyone gets settled in. Besides, Maya's coffee machine seems to be producing some really good interdimensional blend. Just another successful diplomatic mission," Tony said with satisfaction, "though I'm pretty sure we just accidentally solved the galaxy's energy crisis while we were at it." That's just Tuesday for us, Maya said, pouring coffee for everyone. The coffee existed in only 3 dimensions this time, which made it much easier to drink, though it still tasted faintly of possibilities and distant stars. As news of their success spread across the galaxy, the emergency protocols were gradually lifted. The Morrison Protocol was updated to include a new category. Humans have successfully resolved the crisis through methods that defy all known logic, but somehow worked anyway. Jake filed his final report with a simple conclusion. Problem solved. New friends made. Universe slightly improved. Coffee was involved. Admiral Chen's response was equally brief. Of course it was. Good work, Jake. Try not to accidentally create any new forms of life while you're celebrating. As the team prepared for their journey home, Jake reflected on how the mission had gone. They had set out to stop interdimensional parasites from consuming the galaxy. Instead, they had made friends with lost beings from another universe and accidentally created a new energy infrastructure that would benefit everyone. It was, he decided, a pretty typical Tuesday for his team. And he wouldn't have it any other way.